I recently finished Resident Evil 9, like a few days ago, okay, a bit more than a few days ago, and I've managed to 100% it now. So I thought I'd give my quick yay or nay on the game. Spoiler warning. First and foremost, if you're here for the quick review, I'd say it's an incredible game. Gameplay wise, I think it's arguably one of the best Resident Evil games. Maybe not better than, let's say, RE4 remake or RE2 remake, but it's definitely up there. For me, there's two things which hold it back a bit from being one of the best. I personally think the story is a bit whack at times and inconsistent, but I'll get to that later on. And I also think some of the replayability aspects don't hit as hard, which I will also get to later on. Okay, so gameplay. Let's start with the intro real quick. Grace section, really strong, really good at building tension, starts the plot very well. And then Leon's intro is just straight fire, very strong intro to Leon's gameplay, character and aura. So the game starts off, the main gameplay, in Rhodes Hill. This is probably the strongest gameplay section for me. It's kind of like an RE7 setting, with Grace having to escape the Upper East Wing. It feels very tense and the atmosphere is incredible. And we're introduced to the monster, kind of like our Mr. X of the game, and she does have a very spooky design. They did a really good job at making her feel threatening. We also have another Leon section, right as you escape her as Grace, which gives us that rush-inducing Leon gameplay that we were expecting. And in Leon fashion, he loves hitting those one-liners, which I'm really glad they've stuck with. These intro sections, they're not too long, but they do stick with you. Once you get out into the actual care center, this is where we start getting deep into it. I think the Grace gameplay in the care center is a straight improvement on the gameplay of RE7 and RE8, which may be a hot take to some, but the atmosphere is just incredible. And to note, I think a lot of the details put into Grace's character do help a lot with this. I do think that Rhodes Hill Grace is some top tier survival horror gameplay. They really nailed it here. The best part of the game is Rhodes Hill Basement, which is even better than the base floors. The atmosphere and tension in that area is crazy. Once again, they nailed the hell out of this section. You can tell that they put a lot of effort into Rhodes Hill. Something else I'd also like to note is that the zombie personality and variety is really good in this game. I think that is part of the reason I'd also call it an upgrade to RE7 and RE8. The AI and actions, they feel different for every zombie. It really makes the game feel alive and real because of this, not just some copy-paste zombies. And the Leon sections in Rhodes Hill are really short, but they still pack in the action gameplay. But I definitely think that by design, they give Leon short sections, because he gets a lot of gameplay later on. Fun little gameplay design as well. You can kill all the zombies in Rhodes Hill as Leon, so when you come back from the basement as Grace, you can loot these as well. There's also a little girl called Emily, who Grace has been trying to help and protect. She has some story implications which we'll discuss later on. There's a transition sort of phase to Act 2, where you find out some lore stuff with Victor Gideon, who I haven't mentioned yet, but he is one of the main antagonists. The gameplay is pretty good there for Leon and Grace. You get a cool sniper sequence as a Leon, kind of similar to protecting Ashley in RE4. The Grace gameplay here is cool, but it doesn't have that tension that Rhodes Hill Care Center had. As I said though, transition to Act 2, right? Oh, and I mentioned Emily before. She turns into a monster here and Leon kills her. I feel a bit contradictory about this, and I'll explain why later. But something I think is good about this game is that a lot of the story does feel very foreshadowed if you pay attention to details, lore and all that. Like, this moment was pretty obvious to me. Oh, and also Grace runs off here and finds Gideon, who introduces her to Timu Wesker. So now we are Leon at Raccoon City. They did really well to hype this up. I'm going to call this Act 2. Rhodes Hill is Act 1, Raccoon City is Act 2. This is basically the Leon segment I was hinting at earlier. It's just full balls to the wall Leon gameplay. We're introduced to this credit system, allows us to purchase things like upgrades, resources, all that, which feels very cool and nostalgic, but not in a bad way. I do actually want to talk about the atmosphere of Raccoon City. It feels pretty great. There's a lot of cool sound effects that really make you feel like you're in this sort of nuked city, right? Like you can hear rumbling, you can hear like what sounds like distant explosions. I think they really nailed it with here. But like, I'd say it feels a bit weird to see that some buildings are just fully standing like nothing happened. I think this is things you probably won't notice first playthrough, but it's something I think takes you out of it a bit if you do notice it. And we start with this giant spider. It was a pretty fun boss fight. I did have a funny bug with it though. I don't really have much to say here. It was a cool intro boss to Raccoon City and a nice surprise. So the core gameplay of Raccoon City is split into 3 sections. You gotta grab 3 parts, make a detonator, blow up the gate. Now, to be real, this part does feel a bit fillery, but the gameplay is pretty fun for Leon, so it's not too bad. And you do get some Timu Wesker lore. It kind of just feels like you're going through gauntlets of enemies to get your reward, so it does feel a bit repetitive, and on subsequent playthroughs, it's like okay, to be honest. After you're done with that, you get this cool bike section, and it's kind of like classic RE. It brings in that cheesiness, you know, we get the Leon one-liners. It's a fun little section, but it doesn't last too long. But you do get to put Gideon in the dirt, which is cool. And now, we're back at RPD. This section isn't too long, but I did like the flashbacks and atmosphere of it. We get some cool lore here, as well from Timu Wesker. And Mr. X is back! Timu Wesker, I think he had him created again or something. We get a boss fight with him. It's a pretty cool throwback, features moves from the Super Tyrant boss fight in RE2, along with some new things involving like cars and missiles. And the fun part of it is, you can basically parry like everything. I do think RPD could have been done a bit better. It's a very short like section. I think they kind of just used it for marketing, to be honest. But, you know, it could have been worse. After we beat Mr. X, we get a section filled with plant enemies involving Leon descending into a giant asshole in Raccoon City. Yeah, I believe it's like right next to the center of impact from the missile, right? And it leads us to the final section of the game. There's also this plant boss, which was it was alright. It was alright, but mechanically I didn't feel too much about it. Oh wait, no, there's another thing. The orphanage. Don't know how much I feel about this. I feel like the gameplay here was kinda ass. I don't know, and especially on repeat playthroughs, it's a bit cool lore, but I didn't feel too much about it. So moving on to what I'm gonna call Act 3, the lab. We have a Leon section again. It's kind of cool. We get combat with actual people, you know, they have guns. And you get this cool boss fight, which is what I assume is Hunk, or a Hunk clone. This boss fight is a very fun one, one of the better boss fights in the game. You gotta learn parry timing, he sometimes goes stealth, shoots random shots. In general, it rewards a lot of player skill, awareness and precision. Very fun. Also some lore stuff. Like, Grace needs to release this Elpis stuff, which Timu Wesker wants, thinks it will empower him. But Leon comes and rescues her. At this point, Leon is on his deathbed. And then we get some more Grace gameplay. I don't think this Grace gameplay, it's not as good as Rhodes Hill, but I think it's still good. And we can see character development. She's more composed. We get introduced to the good old Lickers. However, they felt weaker in this one. I feel like their hearing was nerfed. We also get some more Leon action, except because he's like nearly dead, he suffers from symptoms of the T-virus every now and then. So you gotta be aware of that in combat. So as you can probably guess, this is closing out the story. There isn't much reveals here. There's a reveal about Grace being a normal person, which I will talk about soon. You confront Timu Wesker, and you get a choice as Grace. One destroys Elpis, the other releases it. If you destroy it, you get the bad ending, not the canon one, right? Leon dies, but you're offered a save reload to right before the choice. If you release Elpis, Timu Wesker uses it, but it gets rid of his powers. Then Gideon comes in and kills him. So this leads to another problem I have with the story. I feel like Timu Wesker didn't do too much for how relevant he felt. Sure, it's Timu Wesker, right? But I don't know, it was a pretty cool reveal. And then he just dies. Like, he doesn't really do anything. Afterwards, you fight Gideon as Leon once he's cured. Not too much to say about it. It was a cool spectacle, and there was a pretty neat reveal about Nemesis there. And then you beat him, Chris's team comes in, gets you out, and then there's some ending shenanigans. So it turns out Emily is alive, and you can save her, which I felt a bit weird about, because Leon says he didn't hit any of her vitals, but bro, I was blasting those vitals in that scene, so it felt kind of wrong to me. At the same time, it was a happy ending, I guess, so that's nice for them. And yeah, there's also the reveal that Grace is just a normal girl. There's nothing really special about her, which does feel kind of weird considering she got bit at the start and nothing happened. But once again, I don't know if that's like a plot hole or not, but I'm hoping there is an explanation in the future. As I said before, the story and some of the writing was a bit wacky for me, so it takes some points off. But the gameplay in this game was really amazing first playthrough, so that gets some bonus points. There's a lot of small details in the gameplay that really add on to the experience for me, and I think it's definitely one of the more in-depth games with that in the Resident Evil series. And overall, it proves to be a great sequel onto the series, which is kind of crazy. Like, you consider how many games there are now, and yet they still feel like they're just getting better. Now, I do think on subsequent playthroughs, there are some sections which do drag on. The intro feels very long on repeat playthroughs, same with the orphanage, and even like Raccoon City does a bit as well, just because it does feel a bit fillery. I don't think it takes too much off the game. The game is still amazing, especially if you're a casual player, but just something to know, sort of personal opinion. But I do think all the characters are pretty great, with the only problem I really have is how some of their stories are resolved. But Resident Evil has always been kind of cheesy with its writing, so it's your choice on how you decide to look at it. It's not the biggest problem, it's kind of what you'd expect out of an RE game. I do think the gameplay though is a great improvement on RE7 and RE8, whilst also mixing in the action from RE4. And whilst I don't think the action gameplay is as good as RE4, the difference isn't too great. Overall, this game is a solid yay from me. I would recommend it. And I think the game is also a great intro to anyone looking to get into the series. I hope you guys enjoyed this little review. I kind of want to do more game reviews, bit of variety. So stick around for it and I'll see you next time.